some ideology as to who we thought we would endorse from that perspective way back when. And so far, you know, one has come to pass, and I'm going to wait to see if the second one comes, and I believe it will. I do.
All right, we hit 8 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and start. And attendees are able to watch via YouTube, able to watch on here as attendees, and through Facebook. So I will pass it over to you, MVP Lannon, to start us off this evening.
Great. So thank you, Denver, definitely for putting all this together and the amazing work you've been doing for Women's and Fair Practices. Tonight, we're hosting AFGE's Black Leaders Forum, hosted by the Women's and Fair Practices departments. I'm MVP Jeremy Lannon, and pretty much we're hosting this forum to help educate, listen, learn, advocate, and just do what we need to do to make sure that leaders at all levels of AFGE are able to kind of share their experiences, share their truth, share their stories. We are a union that represents many diversities. And so in order to be able to stand in unity, we have to understand and be willing to learn from each other's experiences. So we wanted to host this forum so that we could hear from AFGE leaders and some of our Black leaders in AFGE that have helped build this union into what it is today, and that will also be a part of what the future holds for AFGE. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it back over to you, Denver, to introduce our panelists and get us started. Thank you.
All right, well, thank you so much. We have a great set of leaders with us this evening. First and foremost, we have the National President of AFGE, Everett Kelly, with us this evening, MVP David Mullett, MVP Fredna White, Yolanda Kent, and Kendrick Robinson from Young Chair, and Kristen Morgan. So we're very happy to have you all with us this evening. And we're going to go ahead and start off with a question. So I'm going to ask one question and go through all panelists, and then we're going to go on to the next one. So starting with MP Kelly, what does being Black and being a Black leader mean to you?
Okay, first of all, thank you, Denver. And I want to take the opportunity to say thank you to MVP Lannon for this forum. For me, being Black is simply being. If you are asking whether I'm proud to be Black, I will share that I'm extremely proud to come from such a rich cultural heritage, and I take great pride in the fact that my ancestry consists of people of tremendous strength, courage, intellect, and faith. I drink from deep wells of wisdom and other, dug, not me myself, but others dug, and I'll never forget the depth of gratitude that I owe those people. I take very seriously the privilege of being a Black leader and a member of the African-American community. For me, being a Black leader means digging more wells, not necessarily for me to drink from, but for our children and our future generations, people of all races, all genders, faith, and cultures. As a Black leader, I would hope that through my work, my name might be linked with a long tradition of Black leaders who have inspired others to achieve their goal to make the world fairer, more progressive, and more moral and more peaceful place to live. In my profession, we many times use the phraseology that we've stood on the shoulders of giants. It was Sir Isaac Newton who said, "If I have seen further than others, it is by standing upon the shoulders of giants." And I think we're truly in that situation today. I think we have to understand that we don't just arrive on the scene by ourselves, but it's those that have traveled ahead of us. So thank you.
Thank you, MP Kelly. Ms. Fredna White, would you like to answer the question?
First of all, thank you, Denver, for the promotion you gave me. You elevated me as a national vice president. Actually, I'm a retired VA employee, chairman of the AFGE Human Rights Committee, district women's coordinator, and whatever else in AFGE. But
so you deserve the title. You deserve the title with all that.
It's been a very interesting and long journey. And as Everett stated, yes, I'm proud to be Black. And I use this little statement I say to people when early in my career, when they start questioning and whatever different conversations we'd have, I said, first of all, let me let you understand something. White is my last name, but I am the blackest white you will ever meet in your life. And that's nothing against nobody else. And when you tell me that when you look at me, you don't see black, that means you're not looking at me. You're really not looking at me. And the journey that I've had as coming up in AFGE has been a very interesting learning journey that I have I've taken and coming up through AFGE, through the ranks of AFGE. Started in yes, I'm called 1902, but that's exactly not exactly when I started. Actually, I first became actively involved in holding offices in 1979. I've held some office in some shape, form, or fashion, many of them within AFGE, and even on the job in the federal government. Sometimes you're not necessarily trying to quote unquote be a leader, but when you see things that need to be done for your brothers and sisters, then you have me personally, I feel a need that it's my responsibility to get that done. A person who can't do for themselves in a situation in the workplace, I just have to do it. Not looking for any credit or anything like that, but I feel like it's our responsibility to do that, to help one another and do what has to be done. And it's been a long, interesting journey, and I'm still on that journey within AFGE. As far as with the federal government, oh man, I tell you, I was just sharing with Jeremy earlier that every position, every job that I've had within the federal government, I had to fight for it. Mm-hmm. And things that I went through, they were learning experiences. And but I had to just step up front and fight for it. Fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves in the same situations like that. And it's been interesting, but I'll just stop, give somebody else the opportunity, because I know we have a time constraint we're working with now.
Thank you, Ms. White. Yes, and we're definitely going to hit back on those work adversities and conversations. So thank you. Next, David Mullen.
Sure. Being Black. First of all, it means that the doctors made the right delivery to my mother and father. That heritage had taken place, that, yeah, you deliver Black individual. But being Black meant for me in my lifetime that there were two forms of education. Had been educated in the one system of the public school system, but had to be educated from home about what this is going to mean as far as the application of that when it comes to me as a Black man in America. Being a Black leader to me meant carrying the extra weight, that the fact that I'm not just representing myself, but the entire community, as President Kelly has said, that has went before me, which went before me with some morals, some standard, a fiber about them that you don't just take for granted because somebody thrusts you into the role of you are a leader. You know, my thought is that being a Black leader means that everyone should be leading by example, right? So that extra pressure that you feel all the time, that it's not about me and a title, it's more about me doing the right thing because who else is being represented by my skin color, by my culture, by the race that I belong to.
So. Thank you, Mr. Mullen. Appreciate it. Next, we're going to go to Yolanda Kent.
Good afternoon or good evening. That was kind of a strange question to me, but I guess what I would say about what does Black mean to me? I'm proud to be from a heritage of resilient and strong people, people who have a forgiving nature and have been able to just make it, survive and even thrive to this day. And as far as being a Black leader, I feel like it's an opportunity to break down some of those stereotypes that have seemed to have crept back up in recent years. It's a way to break down some barriers that have seemed to have started to come back up. And that's basically what I'll say for right now.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Kendrick?
Yeah, so for me, being black is a whole vibe. I love it. You know, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It's definitely dangerous sometimes, but it's great. You know, it's great. The culture, the community, the love. It's life giving to me. But as for being a black leader, for me, being a black leader is fighting for more than just equality, but fighting for equity. I mean, don't get me wrong, equality it's very important, but after centuries of systemic oppression of Black people, more than equality is necessary to level the playing field, right? The deck has been stacked against us, and as Black leaders, we have to fight for a more equitable society. In a more equitable society, you know, we'll see more opportunities for financial, educational, and cultural growth. So it becomes so important that we, as leaders of the Black community, make sure that we make those opportunities known, make those opportunities relevant, and make sure that everybody is working towards this better goal, which is just a better, more equitable society for everyone.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, Kendrick. And then Kristen Morgan?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Kristen Morgan. I'm the new kid on the block. But being a new Black leader in AFGE has definitely opened my eyes a little more. When I first joined AFGE, there had not been a Black woman in a position of leadership. I don't think ever at our in our local, and definitely holding a position of leadership in my local gives me a sense of pride. I'm very proud, but not prideful. But very proud to have held this position. And I think that being a Black female leader in the position that I'm in, it definitely opens the eyes of the rookies that come behind me to let them know, just as my brother Kendrick was just speaking, that equity, you know, we always talk about being fair and equitable. However, you know, groups of people are still marginalized. Black people, women, we're still marginalized. So I think being a Black leader and being female definitely will help us with the task of, you know, equity, being equitable. Being black, you know, we've always grown up hearing you have to work twice as hard to be given half as much. And I think that definitely makes all of us strong leaders, because we've heard that mentality over the years, and we've had to strive to uphold higher morals and higher standards in education, and make sure we're staying professional, because we have to break those stereotypes. We have to be twice as good to be, you know, even given half as much. So I definitely think that makes us strong leaders, AFGE, in our community, in our churches, in our homes, in our families, and, you know, every aspect of our lives.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And I know AFGE benefits every single day from having leaders who are you and like you, and who use their power and voice to elevate the needs of the many and of the unheard. With that being said, we're going to go to our second question, which is we're going to ask you to explain your journey into leadership, how you got to the position that you are today, both in AFGE and or in your workplace, and discuss how maybe race have had intersect those spaces along the way. So I'll go ahead and start with Yolanda. Yolanda, looks like you're muted.
Sorry, can you repeat that again? That was a mouthful.
Absolutely. So can you explain your journey into leadership and explain how race and your own personal background has affected or elevated or changed your position in leadership and your journey, both your leadership and position in your workplace and AFGE?
Well, my position, my union position, I'm a local president of a law enforcement agency, a federal law enforcement agency. My journey is, I just have always been that person that kind of advocated for the underdog. Even though I went to an all-white school, and even though, you know, I lived amongst a lot of adversity, you know, because of I was the only Black person early on in my education. Um, I think that probably played a role in how my experiences and how I feel about when other people are treated in a poor manner. And so I guess as I've grown up and seen it happen as I've gotten older, I just was always that advocate for the people who, the underdog, the people who you don't expect to succeed, the people that don't get the opportunity to demonstrate who they can develop into being because they aren't given the same level playing field as other people. And so as far as my agency that I've been for about 21 years now, and it's a mostly African-American agency, I wouldn't say that my race has played a role, but I have seen where there are people who have been treated very poor for reasons that don't make sense. Like we had our management in our agency treated us bad before the current administration even existed. And so I wouldn't say that that was a race thing because some of the people in our agency, the higher ups are African Americans. So I can't really say that my race played a role in why I'm in this position, but definitely the treatment that I saw, it wouldn't matter to me what color or gender or what other, you know, any limitations or whatever the situation is, that didn't, that wouldn't matter to me. If I feel like you're being treated poorly or unfairly, then, you know, I'm in your corner.
Ms. Brenda White?
Okay, my journey, as I stated, I just took an interest, and this is, I think, when I first started going to a union meeting, it was 6 years after I had started working for the federal government, even though I joined the first day I started. And I went to the union meeting because the door prize was $120. And in 1971, 76, 77, that was a lot of money. It was a December meeting. I said, oh, I can win the door prize, have a lot of money for my kids for Christmas. Okay. Anyway, make a long story short as I can. I went to that meeting in hopes of winning the door prize. That's the only reason why I went. But at that meeting, it sparked something inside of me. And I kept going and I kept going. I had a thirst for what is this union stuff? Because I wasn't raised in a union family, but I kept going and it caught on. And in 79, I got elected. Our local at the time, it was chartered April the 1st, 1958, had never, ever had anybody of color in an elected position in our local. But in 1979, we just kind of took it. We had elected a Black president. We elected a Black secretary, which was myself, Black executive vice, and we were on a roll. From that point on, it just went on. I first got elected president. I was the first female Black president to be elected of Local 1822 in 1992. And that was the first Human Rights Committee diversity training that I missed. It was being held in Anchorage, Alaska, the same week that we were having the election. I had a tough decision to make. I said, don't want to miss the Human Rights Training Conference, but I can't not be here for the elections. So I chose to stay home for the elections. Anyway, I won as president. I was president for 24 years. And during that period of time, working with the federal government, every time I was up for a promotion, needed a promotion, about to get a promotion, I had to fight for it. I had to literally fight for it. I put in for a position which was called an administrative officer of the day in the Department of Veterans Affairs at the hospital, and put in for it 2 times. Each time I was the highest qualified of all the top 5 applicants on the cert. Interviewed but not selected. So that I went and talked, I filed an informal discrimination complaint. And the chief, the selected official, was just appalled. He, Brenda, how could you? How could you? I said, well, I need some answers here because nothing is right here. But needless to say, the next AOD position, as we call it, Administrative Officer of the Day, came open. I was selected. Then again, I was the highest qualified. I was selected, which in turn made me the first Black Administrative Officer of the Day. Now, in the VA system, if you're an administrative officer, that means you, by delegation of authority, are in charge of the whole VA hospital on off-duty and irregular tours of duty hours. And I was the first to do that. And that was just because I didn't like the way things were going. And dealing with others, I had took on all kinds of cases and everything. Because just like Yolanda said, when I see a person not being treated right, I take it upon myself to make sure that they know and understand what their rights are and how they should be treated. And I let them make the decision if they want to do something about it. And needless to say, I've had a lot of successes. Then I ran as the, well, in 1984, I ran for the 10th District Women's Coordinator position. And I've held that position now since 1984. And I'm currently chairman of the National AFGE Human Rights Committee, which my cohorts have elected me to do that. This is not the first time. And I do trainings and whatever, handle discrimination cases. And it's the kinds of things that we have to do. And it's like we got to do just a little bit more than anybody else, period. But it's just within me that I feel like I have a responsibility and I'm supposed to. When I see where there's a need, if I can fill that need, I need to try to do that in the workplace, in the union, and everywhere else. So I'm going to stop because I could talk all the way about AFGE and all this journey, but I've had a really interesting journey and I love it. And I'm still on that journey within AFGE.
We're lucky to still have you. Thank you so much, Ms. White. Kendrick?
Yes. So as far as leadership and how race played a role, so I, like several others before me, I joined the union because I was being discriminated against based on my race. I remember feeling so defeated. It is very heavy when the beautiful melanin that grants us our complexion is also the reason for so much societal aggression. And I felt really low because it felt like I was fighting, management with two hands behind my back, at least until I got involved with AFGE. And as a Christian man, let me say, I believe that what he meant for evil, God turned it around for my good.
All right.
So I fell in love. I fell in love with AFGE because I saw the great work that they did and they did for me. And because I didn't want that same thing to happen to anyone else, I decided that I would start fighting alongside with my president, Rosalind Austin Stewart. And she saw my work ethic and she kept putting me into these positions to excel. And as long as I worked really hard for the people of this union, I found that opportunities for advancement and responsibility kept coming my way. And I was really appreciative of that because it was a testament to the hard work that I was doing and let me know that I was doing the right thing, right? And sometimes, you get scolded and things like that, but it always kind of points you towards the right direction because fortunately, the mentors that I've had in my life thus far have been more than decent. They've been very well, and they've been helping me and molding me to become this better leader that I try to aspire to today. And now I'm the chair of the National Young Committee, and we are rocking and rolling as a cohesive unit, right? Race is not a barrier to ideas being shared. Nobody's ideas are being stifled. And that is just so important because these ideas coming together and on all of these different issues that we're having and facing in our society, it's so important that we don't have these racial barriers in these environments. These are supposed to be our safe spaces. And so we have to make sure that our safe spaces are not toxic environments when it comes to race, which a lot has happened, throughout the past where we've seen race still be a toxic environment in our safe union spaces. And so we have been working deliberately to end that. And I'm so appreciative of, like I said, the mentors that have brought me to this point. And as I continue moving forward, that's just kind of one of the main things is just making sure, hey, we're eliminating toxic spaces all 2020, all 2021, and all the way into the future.
That was lovely, beautiful. Thank you, Kendrick. Appreciate it. Kristen?
Okay. So my I'll try to keep my story about my rise to leadership pretty short. Um, when I was very, very young in my agency, well, let me first start by saying I'm a nurse practitioner, and when I was very young in the agency that I'm currently in, I felt as if I was being discriminated against because of my race. I was the only Black medical provider. At the institution, and I felt as if I was being made to pay for that. And because I did not get the representation that I needed in that moment, instead of taking a sour attitude, I decided to be the change that I wanted to see. And I got involved in my local and started learning, started reading the collective bargaining agreement, and started, trying to help with cases and things like that, so that no one else would have to go through what I went through when I was fighting my battle against the agency. So that led me to starting out as a, just a willing worker, to being appointed as a steward, to then running for an elected position. And currently I'm very proud of the work that we're doing in our local and our representation. And I absolutely feel that I would not be the leader that I am without the mentors and that I've had that came before me. Maurice Britt, Eric Young, Ray Coleman, they all have mentored me along the way, all strong Black leaders that I absolutely owe my leadership skills to. And I couldn't have asked for better leadership. So I think, one, seeing some great union leaders before me definitely rubbed off, and I was able to take on the task of being a Black leader in AFGE.
Well, thank you. I know you're blazing the way for many others. Yes, snaps all around. And Pete Kelly.
Okay, thank you again, Denver. When I think of the question, the answer to this question is virtually the same as the answer to the first. There is no separating being Black from who I am or any part of my life experience. You all know my story. You've heard me tell it. Growing up in Alabama, my experience in school, in the military, at the Anderson Army Depot, the Black people who helped me rise never had the opportunity that I had. They didn't have a chance to see a Black man exercise his leadership skills in the labor union at Anderson Army Depot prior to me, because I was the first African American to become MVP of District 5. But I had to withstand racist jokes at the job site. In 1981, when I went to work for the government, I was one of 3 Blacks assigned to this work center. And when the other 2 was out, the supervisors took advantage and made fun of Black people. And only one Caucasian was willing to stand up and testify in an EEO complaint. Only one. And the sad part is that I was in a temporary appointment for 18 months. And I had to endure all of these racist comments, all of these things. And when I became permanent, I filed an EEO complaint with the understanding that I would make sure that no one else would be treated in the manner that I was. But I had my mother's voice in my head telling me no matter what I heard from others, I could achieve any dream that I had. I heard a voice telling me that I and others like me deserve to enjoy the fruits of my labor, and that it was up to me to help others and help myself. She was that giant for me. I know how hard my mother worked. I know how hard my father worked, and how hard my parents and my generation before them worked, and how they didn't have the privilege of getting even a tiny fraction of respect. I have been accorded anything that like the responsibility that have been entrusted in me now. The fact that I am able to stand today as AFGE's national president is awesome to me. And I never take it lightly. I never take it for granted. Responsibility of the office of national president are enormous. And I very much am aware that there are those who don't believe a Black man can or should be trusted with such an awesome responsibility. But every day I go and I do my job. I hope I do it in such a way that any doubts are dispelled. I hope that people that I represent see me embracing every issue that affect labor, and I tackle it head on. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you, MP Kelly, and thank you for your leadership and for leading this union to be union strong. MVP Mullet.
Sure, thank you. Well, mine started at childhood when instilled in us was that we could be anything we wanted to be. Anything that somebody else could accomplish, we could accomplish, regardless of our skin color. We was also taught, but don't forget, you're no better than anyone else because of what you achieve, what you have. No one else is any better than you. Keep in mind that your name will go places that you will not travel. Be certain what's attached to it. So I have a few different areas of leadership that I split into. Is that, and how does the race come into that? Well, growing up, we weren't afforded opportunity to do other distracting things like go to the movie because it wasn't affordable every once in a while, or any of those other things, skating rinks, things like that. So our outlet was outside sports, right? So with my mother being valedictorian of her class, she couldn't go to school and had to go to work, right? So I ended up with a basketball scholarship and ended up becoming a registered nurse, only to find out that even in that system, it existed. That on a basketball team in the college in New Jersey, that at home, there were six brothers on that team, but at home, only 2 played at a time. Became so obvious to us that on the floor, you look and see if another brother's on at the score table, one of us coming out, if it's 2 already out there. But on the road, we play as many as all 5 at a time. So you see those type of things. I was the only Black male to graduate from that nursing program. Right? Fast forward into the military where I become NCOIC. So I had some leadership there, but you can notice the treatment was different as far as promotion. Individuals without degrees being promoted ahead of you, and you put on the wait list. Coming to the VA, I never knew until I got there that when I got to the VA, that I'm the only male Black RN that they had in 1983. And the fact that that extra recruitment effort to get me there was what was taking place. But when I got there, they didn't know what to do with me. So that for 2 weeks, they've had nursing assistants orient me to the work environment, right? But I'm a registered nurse now with 6 years of experience, but they didn't know what to do with me. And the people ask, you know, why is this happening? That's not how they orient the other nurses who showed up. No, because it was different for me from that perspective. So when I got involved with AFG from the assistance of who was a co-worker, who was chief steward at the time, who became president, who was the first mentor I had in AFGE, right? What she believed in was sharing the information, sharing the right way of doing things, and making sure that we're doing things based on the Black and white, not how we feel. That include how we represent individuals. That, oh yeah, we'd be treated differently, but I saw that as a fair opportunity. Positions I was promoted into, I had no desire to be in those positions. What was thrust upon me was that if you don't do it, who's gonna do it? Who's gonna help the people who can't fight for themselves? All right, so I had a number of positions to include up to president of the local, held positions within the VA council as far as district representative, 15 plus years, 20 years on that executive board. And then as asked, what are we gonna do about our union in the 5th district? And so they said, well, you should consider that. And I ran because I didn't like the way of what I saw and I'll give it to my perception of what I saw, what direction our union was going in. You know, and I feel that as a leader, we have a responsibility about the standard that goes forward, that we're going to mentor and show our youth about what labor is supposed to stand for, right? Then we have to make sure that we're upholding that standard as leaders. So that's been my journey on the two fronts, from nurse perspective and also from the union perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, VP Mullet. And next we're going to go into a question that kind of reflects more on what we're seeing every day. People have the tenacity and the courage to share their everyday experiences of being Black, identifying as an African American, what have you, in our spaces, and the adversities and the negative reactions from everyday people in these spaces. And I would kind of ask you all to please share if you face any everyday adversities or challenges in the workplace based on your race, and how we can counter that as a union and as a community. So let's start with Ms. Fredna White.
Well, let me start by saying this. When I came home from college, came back to Waco from college, I was looking for a job. I went down to, then it was called Texas Employment Commission, and I got hired. I got hired at the General Tire and Rubber Company. And they were really grumbling to hire me because they were on the verge of losing some government grants and contracts because their employment staff was not diversified. Basically, they hired me because I was Black. Not to mention the fact that I had been to college and all of this. And after working for General Tire for a period of time, then there was this young white girl got hired in. We became real good friends, same job. And one of the first things they told all of us really hired at the company, we don't discuss salaries. We don't discuss salaries. Well, you know, the person that I am and this other friend of mine that got hired, we were just working and talking about salaries. When I told her that I was hired in at $280 a month, that was in 1967, okay? $280 a month, which was a lot of money, especially here in Waco in Texas. And when she told me she was hired at $320 a month, when I told her that, she was angry. She was so angry. She was going to do something about it. I said, no, 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 because you don't need to get fired and I don't either. But anyway, that was so interesting that she was just really appalled that she had a semester of junior college, 2 semesters of junior college. And I was a 4-year college person with a major in mathematics and all. And the salaries were so different, $320 versus $280 or whatever. Anyway, but that was so interesting. I was thinking how along the way in every aspect of life here in the community or whatever, those types of things happen and are going on all the time. I had a situation where I was representing a lady. She was 40 years old. She applied for a job. She was very well qualified for a job. They did not select her. They selected she was a 40-year-old African-American female. They hired a 22-year-old young white girl who, first of all, had lied on her application. But I was successful in winning that case. Got the lady an enormous amount of money back, plus back pay and interest on the back pay, got the job and everything. But anyway, there was those types of things, even in the communities that we feel not only in the work site, but in the community as well. Like with my children going to school, those types of things, I would talk to them about it, what to expect, to understand and to realize. Number one, you love all people. You love all people. But you have to be consciously aware of the fact of those things that are going to happen to you. Because I lived through that part of walking downtown, a little country town here in Texas, and my parents and grandparents said, you get a drink of water, you go to the bathroom before you leave the house. You go downtown, you do not drink water. Because you had the colored water fountain and you had the white water fountain. Even when my husband and I were traveling to New Jersey, We stopped in Mississippi to get gas. My daughter at the time was like 3 or 4 years old. She had to use the bathroom. We went to go use the bathroom. It was terrible. It was horrible. And my husband, being the person that he was, he ran into the station and he snatched the keys off the thing, because you had the men, the women, and the color. And the colored bathroom was in the back of the service station. I'll never forget that. It was a Gulf service station. And the guy said, go on around to the back. It's not locked. But then we went around there. It was so filthy and dirty and nasty. And I said, oh, James, we can't do that. He went in there and snatched the keys off the, I was so scared. This was Vicksburg, Mississippi. He snatched the keys off the wall, said, take that baby to the bathroom. Went around there, unlocked the latest bathroom, let her use the bathroom, and came back. Then when he got through filling the car with gas, he threw the keys in there. I said, let's go, let's go, let's go. Those are the kinds of things that you witness and you feel. It happens to you just in daily living. And I shared all those type of things with my children coming up so they can be aware. Not that you can put no hate in your heart or anything like that, but you need to understand and know that at the end of the day, because that's the way this society has made it, at the end of the day, you got to be consciously aware of the fact that you are a Black person in this country. You've got to be aware of that so you can be prepared to how to confront and deal with the situations as they occur. But you love all people, you love them. But anyway, I could go on, but I'll stop because I know we got some time involved here.
One of my favorites. Thank you, Ms. White. And then we're going to go to Kristen. Can you explain or divulge some everyday adversities you've faced in the workplace in your community and how we can be a community support and counter those actions?
Absolutely. Every day for me and in this role, this leadership role, as a Black woman is having to break stereotypes, having to prove to people that I am not the angry Black woman, because I'm passionate about representation and making sure that the employees I represent are taken care of. And oftentimes, if I do become passionate at a meeting or while taking care of something, union business, then it's perceived as, oh, she's just that loud little Black girl. And that's not the case. And had I been, maybe another color or a man or, it probably wouldn't be taken that way. It wouldn't be taken that way. So I think part of the roles that we have, not only do we have to do our job in the position that we've been elected, but we also have to work to change the stereotypes and mentality of people who maybe don't look like us and have these perceptions of us that are not true, just not true. So that's really my take on the everyday hurdles that I have to face in the workplace.
Thank you, and thank you for sharing. MVP Mullet, would you like to share?
In the workplace, deal with on a daily basis. First of all, the stereotype that you shouldn't be the one that's in charge. People accepting or wanting to take orders or directions from you simply based on the color of your skin. I've had happen to me as the head nurse of the unit. A patient comes in, didn't realize that the system had been changed in Jacksonville, Florida, University Hospital. They had two different hospitals at one time. They had Duval Medical, which was for the Black patients, University Hospitals for the white. It became merged. We got an 88-year-old lady in who was having a problem because she, I guess hadn't been in the hospital in a while and was asking for the head nurse, right? Because they had brought her to the wrong hospital. So I go in to see her and they introduce myself, out of the military, I'm starch, ready. And she says, Lord, They letting the ends be in charge now. Like you can't, like you can't believe it. As time passes by, I found that as being funny because that's what a person was, and we needed to take care of the person. In uniform, Columbia, South Carolina, capital South Carolina. I go to the store, buy something, give them my money, and my hand out for my change is thrown on the counter. Right? So those type of things. Constantly, still today, I am followed around stores as if I entered a store to steal something. Right? I'm not a thief. Right? But those type of things you have, the extra scrutiny. But I was assured growing up that it wouldn't be enough for me to have the degree, to have the position. I will always have to know and show that I have the degree, know what I'm doing and know what I'm talking about. So that's some of the adversities that we deal with on a daily basis. And let me add before I leave that some of those adversities are inner racism that takes place from within the system. Is that if you go back and look on history about where some things took place as far as some of the sororities and fraternities, the paper bag test did not come from individuals outside of the race. That came from individuals within the race.
That's right.
Because of stereotype that was attached to individual self-esteem, had to find this way to separate as if it's going to make a difference, like you're going to be treated different. Celebration of life.
And that's certainly, I know we've had a few questions in the chat about inter-community racism and that level. So thank you for speaking to that. Yolanda?
Okay, so some of the stories of the more seasoned members of the panelists reminded me of some of my childhood. Like I said, I was the only Black person in my elementary school, and I was born in 1970. Roots came out in like 77, 78, 79. So I was still a young child when that came out. And I don't remember how I felt about the series coming out. I know it was something that our household watched, but I do remember going to school after that and the courage of my classmates at the time to think that it was okay to call me a nigger or just take a chance, and see what I was going to do. It's funny now because I was always being sent to the principal's office after that. Because, I have one of those fathers that's like, you know what, if somebody does certain things, you can punch them in the mouth. And that was what I basically did. I was defending myself. I was a girl, I was the only Black kid. And so, that's what I did. So, and of course, when my parents came to the school, they knew whose parents it was because I was the only Black kid. But so those stories reminded me of that. But in more recent times, I would say the adversarial things that I have had to encounter have to do with being, coming to terms with the fact that this racism thing is real. And people who had closeted it for a period, for whatever reason, how starting to feel courageous enough to make it known that they feel a certain way about people of color. So I am on the Federal Law Enforcement Committee. I'm the representative for District 14. And I guess people who have been on Facebook have maybe saw some of the chatter that has been going on. I'm not on Facebook, so I haven't seen it, but I'm on the committee. So I'm face to face with these people with our telephone calls and our Zoom calls. And that's a bit disheartening to me because even when you try to explain the hypocrisy of how they feel versus you can get behind, you can align yourself with someone who advocates for violence against other people. He's done it at his rallies, he's done it on TV, he's done all this other thing. But when you have these other advocacy groups like Black Lives Matter, you're afraid, you're upset that they don't like law enforcement officers. They're not the only people that don't like law enforcement officers. A whole lot of people don't like law enforcement officers. So if you're that thin-skinned because a few probably unarmed people say that they don't like you, then, you know, that might not be the position for you. And, you know, that's kind of how I put it, you know, it's hypocritical. I see you snapping, Jeremy. So that is like the main thing that's in my face right now. And even to try to explain to the law enforcement officers that don't even like the word racial justice, you know, they want to use social justice, but you're upset about Black Lives Matter. That's a racial thing. So if you're going to use social justice, I don't have an issue with that. But then you're going to have to also put racial justice in there because your what's giving you heartburn is Black Lives Matter. So that is one of the things. And then, you know, to even just to explain to them that one of the reasons that people don't like law enforcement officers is because for the same infractions that a white person may do, you know, mouthing off, you know, not putting their hands on the steering wheel or not following instructions. That's kind of innocuous. It's kind of harmless sometimes for a police officer. But when a Black person does the same thing, it's like suspicious behavior. And so now, you know, you're considering what kind of force you're going to use to get me to comply. Whereas you may have a bit more patience with someone who is not have as much melanin as Mr. Robinson said, as I may have. So I think those are the things that stick in my craw right now. Those are the things that I've seen. Those are the things that are most present for me right now.
Well, thank you for sharing, and thank you for being an advocate in that space that I know it can be very tough. So thank you for using your agency and power. NP Kelly?
Okay, so let me start by saying that Vertices prepared me to be a union leader. Vertices has made me stronger. It also reminded me that what seems small can have a huge impact on a person's life, on their outlook, on the way they relate to others. But things that seem big to others can also seem very routine to others. I shared the story of my reaction to my school and my desire to go to college, the reaction of some members of my local union to my election as local president. My story began to happen at around 3 years old, and you heard me tell the story when I went to visit my mother at her job, and I was stopped at the door and told that I couldn't go through this door because it was the front door, and I had to go around to the back. That started my story. But fast forward to me becoming president of my union in Anniston, Alabama, the home of the 202 bus burning of the Freedom Riders. They were not ready for an African-American to be union president. Anything from having security called on me as a union representative now because my voice was loud, not realizing that that's my preacher voice, okay? All right? Then members driving by my house calling me the N-word. My house being shot into. Dead cats been placed in my driveway. Egg in my house, my car. The experience in the military wasn't much different. And so even today, I know what it looked like. I know what it feel like, and I feel the pain often. But you tell me, are these everyday adversities or are they extraordinary adversities? I don't think we know until far after the fact whether something was everyday or extraordinary. Thank you.
Thank you, National President Kelly. And then Kendrick?
Yes, so a huge adversity for the Black community, I think, is Black trauma. This concept is starting to pick up a bit in the Black community, and it basically represents the fact that dangers of being Black have a lasting and deep impact on our mental. For example, driving while Black, right, is a real thing and it feeds into that concept of Black trauma. There is a different level of fear that comes to Black people when they get pulled over.
Yeah.
For example, I've been arrested twice, and one of those times I was pulled over and arrested at gunpoint because I fit the description. One false move and I'd be dead. I was 17 years old. That is traumatizing, and it vastly and disproportionately impacts the Black community. My story is not unique. My story is not standalone. My story is actually widely prevalent. So Black trauma is real, and healing is not happening because every time we speak out, there is this adversarial force that seeks to stifle our voices, saying that our community doesn't deserve to have our issues addressed, right? Those voices are wrong, but they're loud. And we have to fight to be louder. And it's common, right? Like, hey, everybody, I've decided that I'm no longer explaining Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter anymore, right? Because they get it. I promise you, any person who says all lives matter knows what Black Lives Matter means. They just want to be adversarial against us. This adversity is systemic. It's systemic, and sometimes it's more overt, other times it's not. But the adversities are there. And when Black people come to forums such as these and talk about those adversities, other folks should listen, and they should listen openly.
Thank you, Kendrick. And I think that brings us to our final question. I think we are all organizers at our core. So what is your call to action, call for change, and what would you want our viewers and our allies in AFGE to do to be part of the movement? I'll go to Ms. Fredna White.
I'd like to say that I agree wholeheartedly with what Kendrick just said. And the other thing is I want to say too is that I don't really care if I'm viewed as the angry Black woman, because that's your perception of what it is, because that's a cover for me to letting you know just exactly what is and what isn't. That's what that is. And I don't apologize for that. I don't apologize for being Black, but we have to have the hard conversations. As I shared with Jeremy earlier, you know, we had a human rights training conference. I might have said this already, I don't know, because I tend to repeat myself because I'm so passionate about this whole thing, you know, even for this length of time that I've been involved with it. But when we had the human rights training conference in Minnesota, I was teaching a class, a boot camp class, and I brought out it was at the same time, and I don't know if it was Philip Castile or one of those Black men that got killed by police officers. And I brought it up in the class. And there were people in the class who were just like, oh, no, she didn't. There were some who welcomed it. But my thing is, we have to have these hard conversations. We've got to have them. And we've got to, we meaning all of us, whether of all colors and gender and generations, and age group. We've got to have these conversations, and we've got to not only listen, but we've got to hear what's being said. Because a lot of these things, some of us have lived that others are not aware of, and they cannot relate to it. So if they are going to, we need to have the conversations, talk about it, to be serious about it, and to make that change, and to be that change agent, whatever it takes to be that. I'm not saying pick it up in an AK-47 or whatever, all these other fancy guns or whatever. That's not the answer. But we've got to have the hard conversations, and we've got to not only talk about it, but we've got to hear. We can listen to what you're saying, but you got to hear what I'm saying. You got to hear it. And I think it's all of our responsibility to do that. It's all of our responsibility to not be shy, to get into those. And I want to share this one little thing. You know, in teaching a class on discrimination, I was at Fort Hood. This was several years ago. And it was a labor management class. Supervisors were there, and bargaining unit people were there too. Bargaining people were there. And those managers and supervisors were so in awe They say, they never told us none of this stuff that you're telling us. I had the slides and everything, the Women's and Fair Practice Department, you know, got out my agenda and everything ready, and the teaching materials and whatever. And they were so enthused, and it was just like they were so thirsty for the information to be able to apply it in the work areas where they actually supervise. They said they had never been told that. These were managers. And I represented an employee one time. He was a big African-American male, and they were giving him some disciplinary action because these other non-African-American people said that they felt threatened and felt terror around him and whatever. I forgot what the situation happened. It was. I said, wait a minute. And then he responded in kind. So I said, wait a minute, hold it. Are you telling me that the person who was hearing the grievance said, well, look at it. I said, no, hold it. I said, you're telling me that because he is a big African-American male, that he doesn't have any feelings? He can't get angry? They were angry, he got angry, and then they want to say they feel threatened when they initiated the whole thing? Come on, that's not what that is. Needless to say, I got the case thrown out because it made him say, he's a human being, just like anybody else. And that was because of his race and his stature. And these were non-African-American people who were saying they felt threatened and he was a terroristic threat to them and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, I just think we all have a responsibility to not only talk, but to listen, and not only listen, but to hear. And we can be that change that needs to occur. And I'm so proud of what's going on now with the younger generation, the protesting. And it's so sad that it had to take the brutal death of George Floyd and all of the others, Breonna Taylor, all of them, for this to come about. But it's time for a change, and we can be agents of that change, regardless of what our age and what our position is. We need to do that. We have a responsibility, and I'm gonna stop now.
Thank you, Ms. White. And VP Mullet, what would be your hard ask or call to action as we wrap up today's forum?
Mine would be see something, say something.
There you go.
As it applies to race, to racism. You see it, say it. That includes not just in our workplace, within our union, right? Let us not be dismayed by it, is that there are some things still going on within our union that we need to speak about and say things about. 1995, 5th District, Atlanta, Georgia, no Black employees in the district office. So because the issue was raised, the attack shouldn't be made on the individual raising the issue. We have to deal with the issue. 2019. Some of my brothers in the Georgia AFL make a statement and think it's okay and think they progressed that to say we're not as prejudiced as we were 15 years ago.
Oh my God. Oh.
Right? Not as. So, say something. We have to be truthful about the issue. Don't be afraid to say something about the issue that's not acceptable. It's not acceptable for me to sit there and have individuals make comments about Jews, about whites, about anybody else, and don't say anything about that, to say it's inappropriate, that is absolutely wrong. So see something, say something.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yolanda?
Okay, well, repeat that question again.
So as we're closing up, what would be your hard ask or call to action for our communities and allies in AFGE to be part of the movement and part of the progress that we need?
Okay, so my hard ask, not to air our dirty laundry, but AFGE got some work to do. We know how our OGC's, our general counsel's office is. We need some diversity. We know what happened in the national office, and people did say something and where we are with that. So AFGE has to be the role model. Like I said, I don't want to air our dirty laundry, but we got some cleaning to do. We got a large bill we need to pay. And so for those people in the higher positions that saw it, they needed to say it and not have skirted it and put it under the rug, because it was out there. It had been out there for years, what was going on. So that is a part of my disappointment, and I have the courage to say it. And it lends itself to people questioning AFGE's credibility. And that is the part that is sad. I don't know how to advocate for AFGE when we have all of these, not even minor things, like large things that are going on. So that's my hard ask, is for AFGE to get itself together. And I know that there are some higher ups, on the panel and that may be watching, but I'm just gonna say I'm disappointed. It's embarrassing, and you're gonna have to give me a reason to advocate and bring in new members, because there's some hypocrisy that is going on. And like I said, if you see something, say something. Don't stifle people's voice, because people were saying something. And like I said, your credibility is on the line here. So that's my hard ask. Have the hard conversations, like Ms. White said. And you might have to eat crow, but it happened. It's out there, and we need to deal with it in a swift fashion so that we can get our credibility back.
Thank you. Thank you for speaking to that truth. I appreciate it. Kristen?
Yes, MVP Millett took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, see something, say something. And I mean, from the smallest racist joke that you hear in the break room, to currently in 2019, we still had AFGE members comparing Black council presidents to apes and monkeys, and that was not addressed. We have to police ourselves before we can even have the conversation about how we can change things on the outside. If we have members and leaders within AFGE who don't feel comfortable, who don't feel as if they are going to be defended when they're being compared to a monkey, then how can we even start to have the conversation about how AFGE as a whole can change the relationship in our community, change the race relations in our community? We have to we have to clean it. We have to clean it up amongst ourselves first, and that means having the conversation. That means being open to the conversation, and not listening to respond, as a good friend of mine always says, but listening to understand. We all have different experiences, and if you're not listening to a different perception to understand, and you're only listening to respond, we're never going to get anywhere. We're never going to move forward. So we have to be more open. We have to be more courageous when addressing our fellow brothers and sisters, and call them out on being wrong. Call them out on even the smallest racist things. And we all see it. We all see it every day. We see it. But we have to take a stand, and we have to say something, or it's never going to change. And it has to start with us.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that truth. Kendrick?
Yes. So for me, if I were to say what I would call, I'll say understand what privilege is. White privilege and others. Privilege is too common thought of as a feature that propels white people forward, but that's not really it. Let me be clear. White privilege is a feature that clears a great deal of obstacles that stand in our way. White people, you still have to work hard and all that jazz, but the privilege is you don't have to justify why you're one of the good ones, because you're not simultaneously battling an unjust stigmatization of your people that has lasted centuries. It's not just America either, it's worldwide, from historical caste systems based on the color of one's skin to China just this year, not letting Black people into public spaces because they imagined Black people were spreading COVID-19. This privilege has tiers, and darker folks have historically been on the bottom. And if you understand what privilege is, then you can share with those who are speaking so adversely against it. So please, I'll say, understand and then educate.
Amen to that. Thank you so much. National President Kelly. Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to start by saying that our union is a very diverse union. And I want to take the opportunity to answer this question to introduce you to my new theme for AFGE, moving forward in unity. And I hope that you will take the opportunity to embrace it. And to start with us. I think being an ally for Black leaders or any other union member who aspire to leadership is the notion of solidarity and unity. I very much do not want this moment to be about division and competing grievances. I want it to be about unity going forward. It means that we have to feel what the other person feels. We have to understand what the other person feels. We have to see all sides, regardless of race, creed, national origin, sex, gender, whether you're an LEO, whether you're a DOD worker or a nurse. If we're going to realize the real power that we have within AFGE, we must come together. We must unify and be the power force that we are. Now, we've seen the horrors that have resulted from divisive leadership, and I don't want to see AFGE divided by Black and white, young and old, gay and straight, male and female, one council or district against another. I want us unified, not divided. I'm proud of being Black, but I'm proud of every AFGE leader and every member, because to be an AFGE member is to unify with our fellow federal and DC government workers to help one another, to be an organization that unifies us all. Divisive leadership in this country have brought us close to ruin, from COVID on down to every other issue. When we unite and set aside our differences, that's when we make progress. The economic difference between Black and white in this country are as bad as they were 30 years ago for Black men. And that problem won't be resolved by allowing ourselves to be divided. If we're going to solve this issue, it's going to be by union solidarity. It's going to be by fighting side by side to get better and fairer pay for everyone. Workers lose out when we allow anybody to divide and conquer us. We need to stay united to move ahead in terms of our health, our safety, our wealth, and our security. So as much as I welcome people who have responded to the horrors and that befell Brother George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and Breonna Taylor by asking what they can do better to be allies of the African-American community, my real request for them is to practice genuine solidarity with all of their brothers and all of their sisters and all our union, and reject each and every effort to divide us from one another. What does this mean? If you're a DOD, fight hard for Social Security. If you're a TSA, fight hard for USCIS. If you're a VA, remember that the struggle of federal LEOs and EPA and others are your fight too. And all we have, we all have to rather step up for one another and let not anybody come and divide us. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, MP Kelly. I appreciate it. And then we're going to turn it over to MVP Lannon to close us out for this.
So I just want to say, wow. I'm just completely in awe. I think this was a wonderful event. I appreciate everybody on the call, all the panelists telling your truth. And I'll take the truth over BS any day. So I appreciate it. And, you know, I just say this, you know, being a white guy in AFGE, I've had to learn a lot about race and about being a leader and, you know, how to be an advocate for people that, you know, are different than myself. I had a mentor at the local level, 65-year-old Black woman named Shirley Mae Yarbrough. And I'll never forget her because she changed my life. She took me in when I didn't even love myself, and she taught me how to love myself. And we had a conversation one day, and I was one of those white people that said, I don't see color. And she said, well, if you don't see color, then you don't see me. And I didn't understand at the time what she was trying to teach me. So I had to think about it for a few days. And once it kind of really resonated with me, what she was trying to say to me, I came back to her and I said, I thought about what you said to me, and I see you. I see you, I hear you, I see your strength, I see your beauty, I see your struggle, I see what you go through. She said, now good, now go teach other people what I just taught you.
Mm.
And I'll never forget that. And, you know, after my grandma passed away, Shirley was 65 and I was, of course, a young guy. So, you know, there was a significant age difference, but we were the best of friends. We were like Bonnie and Clyde at the Census Bureau, where you seen one of us, you seen the other, and you knew when we got together, some hell was going to be raised. And when my grandmother passed away, and I felt like, you know, I was in a really bad place because that was kind of my rock. Shirley really just took me under her wing. She treated me, you know, like I was her own family, invited me to Christmas, Thanksgiving. First time I ate chitlins was at her house. So, you know, I just appreciate the mentors that I've had in AFGE. And to be honest, a lot of my mentors have been Black leaders. From Augusta Thomas to Arnold Scott to Fredna White to Dorothy James to now my good brother David Mullet. And I love the Young Committee. I love the HRC. And I just appreciate the leadership in this federation for being exactly who you are. And I just want you to know, as the MVP of Women's and Fair Practices, I see you, I hear you, I stand with you, beside you, behind you, and even in front of you when you need me to. So, you know, thank you for everything, for, you know, being here tonight. And Denver, thank you for, you know, and Shanice and Jenny for pulling all of this together for Women's and Fair Practices.
Well, thank you. And yes, thank you to our wonderful panelists and for everyone who tuned in via Zoom and YouTube and carried on a great chat and stayed with us about 17 minutes after the hour. With that being said, the work never ends. It took 400 years for us to get here, and it's going to take us a while and a lot of fight to get back to a point of equity and inclusion for all. So thank you so much, you guys, and I wish you guys a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a good evening all. Stay safe.
Right, yes.
Thanks, everybody.